Hello, my name's Mark Saunders, and this is a YouTube video presentation on rigour, relevant and modes of knowledge creation, and also about responsibility in business research. It's one of a series of YouTube video presentations on my YouTube channel, Mark Saunders on Research Methods, and you can see the link to this on the bottom left-hand corner of every slide, and I strongly encourage you to look about this for more videos. In this presentation, we're going to be looking at what we mean by rigour and relevance. We're then going to look at the different modes of knowledge creation, so mode 0, mode 1, mode 2 and mode 3, and then why these are important in terms of rigour and relevance to research. We're then going to move on and discuss the community for responsible research in business and management and shed some light on this, and hence we see the lighthouse. And then finally we'll finish up with further reading. So let's start off by defining rigour. And this is not rigour just for academics, but also on the part of the practitioner. And what we mean by rigour is the strength and the quality of research methods we use. And we mean this in terms of the design we use, so how we collect the data, how we analyse the data and how we report this. And these all have to obviously be linked back and fit with the research question. And then we can actually have confidence in the conclusions that we draw from this. So it's the whole process or the whole method of doing research. In contrast, relevance is about the applicability or the meaningfulness of the research we do to the stakeholders in that research. And so here we're really interested in the practical utility for business and management, given we're business and management scholars. And it's about how the research addresses real world needs. So it has impact, it's impactful. And within this, it's also about how it advances knowledge. So it's not just recreating the same old, it's actually telling us something new and useful, which is actually applicable to organisations. It's practical, and it's research which can be applied feasibly, so it makes sense and can be used, and it's been done ethically, and it's accessible to practitioners and stakeholders more widely. So let's start by looking at modes of knowledge creation. And you may wonder, why have I started with a picture of somebody smoking? And that's because mode 0, knowledge creation, is about knowledge produced based on power and patronage. And so it's when organisations or companies pay people to do the research they want. And probably one of the main examples of this in the past has been tobacco companies paying people to do research on the benefits of smoking. We also see it now, though, to a certain extent, in pharmaceutical companies sponsoring certain parts of medical research which they deem important. So it's their power and their patronage in terms of paying for and supporting the research that dictates the sort of research that's done in mode 0 research. In mode 1 research, we're looking at knowledge creation or research that's been undertaken where the focus of the question set and how it's answered is set by academic interest. So there's no interest in terms of it necessarily its practical use, it's decided by academics. Hence we see an example there of pictures of journal articles. Mode 2 research is, in contrast, governed by the world of practice, and so it's doing research which is applied and useful to organisations. And here the importance is about research that is collaborative and transcends academic boundaries, and also it fits to the timescales required by organisations rather than the longer timescales of academics. And here we might look at operations processes perhaps, hence we see a factory production there. Next, we're going to look at mode 3 research. Now mode 3 research is where knowledge creation is governed by what is useful and appropriate for mankind or people kind, humankind, the human condition and its benefits. So it's about benefits to society. So here we might be looking at community scholarship, or in particular community engaged scholarship, where working with advocacy groups to improve, say for example, housing or social care. So it's very much the appreciation of the human condition. So how does this all relate to rigour and relevance? Well, if we take a 2x2 matrix where our vertical axis is relevance to practice, going from low to high, And our horizontal axis is about rigour, going from low rigour to high rigour in terms of method. We can plot 4 different kinds of research. And here we're taking work by Hodgkinson et al. In 2001. And research which is neither rigorous in method or relevant is research which is often called puerile. It's of no practical use, there's no rigour in it, and so quite often the findings are incorrect, the study's been ill-conceived, and so there's no use to it. And they call that puerile. We also see research which has absolutely amazingly fastidious research designs. It's well designed, the analysis is superb, but the actual relevance to practice is limited. This research tends to be very, very tightly focused and looking at a single thing in a great deal of depth, so we tend to refer to this as myopic. And we see this research published in journal articles. And that research, I would argue, is fine, but it may not be where you wish to do your research. We then have research which is called populist. And this may be where mode 2 research might be if the rigour isn't there. This is research which is definitely relevant to practice, hence it's in that top left-hand quadrant, but the rigour isn't there, it's not been well designed. And we see this perhaps in those books we see in airport shops or shops on train stations, where we can read about business and management, but we want to think, where did that data come with? How did they find this out? So there's inadequate refereeing, and we can't know whether we can actually trust the rigour of the method. And where Hodgkinson et al. Suggests we should be is in the top right-hand quadrant, pragmatic research. This brings together the best elements of modes 1 and 2, and it can also be mode 3 research. Here, the method is rigorous and research is relevant to organisations. So you're satisfying both rigour of method and relevance to practice. So there we have a typology of 4 types, and the argument is increasing. We should be in the top right-hand corner doing research which is both rigorous and relevant. And that segues very nicely into the next aspect of what we're going to be talking about here, which is about the research being also responsible. And we can see about the research being responsible in the Community Responsible Research in Business and Management's vision for 2030, only a few years away. And we often refer to this community as little cRRBM, Community for Responsible Research in Business Management. And they present a vision for business schools and of scholars within business schools about doing responsible science, producing knowledge which is credible, so that's about the rigour in method, but also responsible research which is useful for addressing problems, and not just any old problem, problems which are useful and important to business and society. And so therefore we see the relevance bit, the rigour and the relevance. And they argue that responsible research ensures credible knowledge is produced, which can be used to inform policies, but not just any sort of policy, progressive policies that promote positive business and management. And they have 7 principles, which we'll look at in a moment. And they end with a call for action to transform business and management research for a better world. So now we see the going back into mode 3. And so their principles relate to service to society, very clearly mode 3, valuing both basic and applied research. They're not saying basic research isn't needed, they're saying both can be important. They're saying different methods are important, they value plurality, and they're also arguing that it's not just one discipline. Business and management research brings in different disciplines, sociology, psychology, economics, to name 3. And it's about collaborating across these disciplines using a sound method. Within this research, the principles suggest there should be stakeholder involvement. And we've already talked about stakeholders in organisations, the employers, trades unions, government, and so it goes on, the society that the organisations are serving, either with product or with services. And they talk about the importance of considering the impact on stakeholders and disseminating the findings of research widely. So not just for academic journals, but for reports and articles and so on, which are more widely read. This we can see in points 2 through 4 as rigour and credibility. And in points 5, 6 and 7, it's this ideas of the relevance and utility. And obviously the services to society also highlights these ideas of relevance and utility too. I'd like to finish up this presentation by talking about the further reading. And the first reference is to the Community for Responsible Research and Business Management's vision on their website. And so you've got the link there. The second reference refers to the 2x2 matrix developed by Hodgkinson and colleagues, which was published in 2001, so a fair time ago, but is still really important and useful, and that's in the British Journal of Management. McKeon and Shuey's book chapter on responsible research in business management is a really useful read and summarises the starts of the movement and what it's doing and what it stands for. And all these are summarised in the much shorter pieces in the first chapter of my own book with Phil and Adrian, Research Methods for Business Students.